The May 5th meeting of the Senate Finance Committee will come to order, including those online. I believe we now have a quorum present. The first thing I have to announce is that Senator McEwen's bill on the Workers' Comp Advisory Council, unfortunately, the fiscal note did not make it. So we have to pull that from the agenda, and we'll have to take that one up next week. So we will begin today with Senator Carlson's Senate File 3308, the claims settlement bill. Senator Carlson, Mr. Coonley, welcome to the committee. And Senator Carlson, you have an amendment that's, I believe, is in our packets. I'm not sure. I'm going to check the A23 amendment.
Mr. Chair, correct.
A23-0146. That's the only amendment you have from your meeting yesterday?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. That's
Okay.
the only amendment.
Senator Murphy moves the A23-0146 to put the bill in the shape that the author would like. Is there any discussion of that motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion prevails. Senator Carlson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm presenting Senate File 3308, which is the annual bill on claims. And what we did is we amended in the detail of what was settled on this year. And what we had was a meeting just yesterday. And what we did is we went through all of the awards. We looked through exonerations. We looked through each of the major and the reconsiderations, the exonerations, and medical reimbursements, as well as claims against the departments. And you have the summary in your packet, I believe. And so if you have any questions on that, I have Mr. Greenlee, the subcommittee legal co-counsel, to answer any questions in detail. And I have some further information if that's what's needed to justify the
Mr.
decisions.
Coonley, yes, thank you. The memo is helpful. Could you speak briefly to anything in particular or things we should be aware of?
Sure, Chair Marty. For the record, Jason Keenley, Assistant Deputy Revisor and co-counsel to the Subcommittee on Claims. What the amendment puts in and what the recommendations of the subcommittee were yesterday, there were 3 exoneration claims that the subcommittee heard, and as Senator Carlson mentioned, a few injury claims. Those come through various statutes for the legislature to make decisions on, and the subcommittee provides recommendations to the legislature on what claims to pay through appropriations process. So all of the claims that were recommended and are in this amendment that was just adopted are appropriations for the fiscal year 2024 and out of general fund money. The total for the bill comes to $1,157,086.32. I know that the committee usually works in thousands, but because these are individual claims, we go down to the individual cent for some of them for the compensation.
Good. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Dames, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair Marty and Senator Carlson. This isn't on this specific bill, but it is on claims. And that is, my question is, when the cannabis bill, if that goes into effect and we start releasing these people from jail that have committed crimes with marijuana, are they going to be eligible for claims?
Mr. Coonley or Senator Carlson?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe that anyone that is eligible under present law would still be eligible for claims. For instance, many of the claims are injuries that have been suffered on work release. And so those claims would certainly be, they're largely irrespective of whatever their convictions were. So I would have to say that, yes, in general, the answer is to your question.
So follow up, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Dames.
So if somebody gets released from prison because we are going to release them because of the new law of marijuana, are you saying then they would have a claim against the state?
Mr. Chair and Senator Dames, the answer would be yes, because those are legitimate injury claims generally, or they're claims that have some basis in physical fact. For instance, the claims for missing property, those types of claims they're totally irrespective of what the person was convicted of.
Mr.
And I
Follow
might
up,
give
Mr. Chair.
Keenly
Sure.
I guess I'd look at advice there, because they're generally doing the initial evaluation of the legitimacy of the claim.
Mr. Cooney, did you have something? And I know Senator Dames had a follow-up then, too.
Senator Marty, Chair Marty, and Senator Dames, there are a couple of different types of claims that the subcommittee hears, and I think Senator Carlson was speaking to the injury claims, and to the extent that those, or the property claims that the subcommittee hears, are in existence now, they would continue to be in existence. As far as the exoneration process goes, that is set out has a statutory mechanism by which the courts largely handle that, as under the process that the legislature set up in, I want to say 2013, sometime around there. And I don't know, I'm not completely familiar with the mechanisms in the cannabis bill as to what those would be. What is currently in statute as far as the exoneration claims is there has to be a decision by the court that the person's situation is consistent with innocence, and so. Again, the specifics of what what is in the cannabis bill could direct that, but in as far as expunging, in general, expunging prior records, those types of things would not necessarily be consistent with innocence. These are more fact determinations of either the thing that happened under the law at the time was not a crime, or the facts show that the person was innocent, that that something comes up in the record that shows that the person was innocent. So again, without knowing the specifics in the cannabis bill for that mechanism, again, that goes through a legislative deemed court process to make those determinations of whether somebody is eligible for to file an exoneration claim with the state Supreme Court.
Senator Dames.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the information. Thank you.
Further discussion of the claims bill? If not, Senator Frentz moves that Senate File 3308 as amended be recommended to pass. Any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Carlson, Mr. Cooney, you got the whole thing done yesterday in one hearing.
Yes. Thank you. And
Thanks for the work
Mr.
on
Chair,
this.
I have to say that it was primarily the agency, the committee that did that. So
I understand that there's a lot of work behind all that. Thank you.
thank you.
We are going to now take on the three different pension bills. And maybe, I guess, I'd like Mr. Nauman to start by giving general overview of the pension targets and the price of each of the three bills.
So, Mr. Chair and members, I will be happy to do so. I think it might be helpful for members to recall that when the Senate Majority Caucus announced its targets, it announced a $600 million allocation of general fund spending for pensions, loosely defined on the tracking as pensions. And the bills that the committee has on the agenda today comply with that overall target allocation. And I will quickly go through, excuse me, Ms. James, sorry. That House File 3100 has a total spend of $491 million. House File 782 has a transfer. This is the automatic IRA bill that we'll see at the end of the agenda, has a $5 million allocation. And House File 1234 has an allocation of $104 million. So together, the appropriations all add up to $600 million.
And with that, we're going to start with House File 3100, which is the Omnibus Pension Bill. Senator Frentz, welcome to the other side of the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. Proud to present the Omnibus Pension Budget Bill. As was mentioned, the target overall for pensions is $600 million. $104 million are in the bill to appropriate for duty, disability, and PTSD. House File 3100 is the pension omnibus budget bill, and I thought, Mr. Chair, we might start by allowing Mr. Erickson to just make a couple comments to give us a little bit of context. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Erickson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And for House File 3100, the appropriations begin on page 15. And as everybody's mentioned, and I'll just keep repeating, there is $485,900,000 in the bill for direct state aids, and those are on line 15.26. There is a specific allocation for those across the many state plans administered by MSRS, PARA, St. Paul Teachers, and the TRA. That you can find on the bottom of page 15, 15.34, going through 16.9. There's also the creation of the statewide volunteer firefighter plan incentive program, and there is a transfer into that account on line 17.6. And finally, there's a $100,000 appropriation to the LCPR, the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement, for additional actuarial cost assessments, and that is on line 17.9 to 17.13.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Just a few highlights from the pension omnibus bill. Of course, this is how we continue to fund the retirements that we promise our state employees, those in public safety, those in administration, those that help our state function. Article 1 is a key provision I'll call your attention to if you're on the Finance Committee. I hope you find this important. It reduces the actuarial assumption. So members, what this says is as we project the pension fund's funding status, how much money we have compared to the promises that we make, our expectation of the return on our investment is going to drop from 7.5% to 7%. There are two implications to that I see that should be of concern or celebration, if you will, to the Finance Committee. One, reducing the actuarial rate of return looks good for those who rate our state's bonding status, our ability to borrow at a competitive rate. One of the reasons Minnesota is a AAA rated state is that our pensions improved in their funding status. Lowering the actuarial rate of return shows Wall Street Minnesota is making reasonable estimates about how much the State Board of Investment is going to return. So that's good. Of course, reducing the funding status of these pension funds creates the impression that it might be tougher to create additional benefits for employees. Has other implications as we go forward. As you'll see in the bill, we make one-time COLA appropriations, so that's good, but funding status is a matter that's important to state employees because as they advocate for benefit improvements, funding status, the higher the better. In Article 2, you see the post-retirement COLAs, that's the cost of living increases. As the pension target is one-time money, members, we are making a couple COLA changes. They are one-time. Sections 1 and 2 delay the commencement of the annual COLAs. Basically, we would have had to postpone those who elected early retirement and would not receive a COLA until they reach normal retirement age. Section 3 relates to the paralocal government correction plan. Sections 4 and 5 are the payment of one-time COLAs to all the members of statewide pension plans and to the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund. I won't go through the details, but essentially, members, this is where we make a one-time cost of living payment to our state employee pension members, a one-time lump sum to be paid no later than July 1st, 2023, to help them with the inflation. As the pension fund target is one time, this is really the only way that we can make those changes. In Article 3, there are MSRS changes that relate to reduced employee contribution and vesting. Article 4 is the para changes related to vesting. Article 5, if you like success stories and you like the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Association, you'll like Article 5. They have essentially taken the one-time money and reached something of an agreement about increased benefit with increased contributions. To be more specific, they are making changes to improve the retirement age for teachers by pulling together employee contributions and employer contributions. And with that, St. Paul teachers, active members, have a little bit better benefit to look at on retirement. So if you're a St. Paul student, you have teachers who are a little bit happier with Article 5. Article 6 are the actual appropriations. I won't list them, Mr. Chair, but they include the plans MSRS General, MSRS Correctional, the State Patrol Retirement Plan, the Legislators Retirement Plan, Judges Retirement Plan, Para-General Retirement, Para-Police and Fire, Para-Local Government Correctional, the TRA or Teachers Retirement Association, and again, the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund. Section 2 transfers $5 million from the general fund to a new statewide volunteer incentive. Mr. Erickson touched on that. Here's what's going on there. Many of our statewide volunteer plans do not invest with the State Board of Investment. That's perfectly legal. However, their investment returns tend to lag behind the State Board of Investment, in my opinion, as a non-finance expert. Probably shouldn't say that on the record here in the Finance Committee. That is because of the ability of the State Board of Investment to make savings on the costs or fees for Wall Street. The point is this $5 million incentivizes those plans that might want to join the Minnesota State Board of Investment plans, not only to get a better benefit, but to ease that transition. And then we are appropriating $100,000 to get our own actuary. This is a little bit in the weeds, but essentially, members, you may know that each of the pension funds hires and pays for its own actuarial study. So when they tell you, hey, this is what we're expecting, this is the life expectancy, here's what it's going to cost to meet our promises, that's fine, but that is the pension fund's own actuary. This $100,000 will allow LCPR to have our own actuarial studies, and if you believe that that independence is of value to the people of Minnesota, you like that appropriation. Mr. Chair, that's the most direct, straightforward, and briefest summary of the pension omnibus budget bill I can give you. I would be happy to entertain questions.
Thank you. Questions for Senator Frentz? I'm wondering if Ms. Lancheski could, I just had a question about whether these recommendations are in line with what, like the 7% the reduction to the assumption of return. This legislation,
Thank you.
how we're doing with this?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. The 7.5 is in line with where the Pension Commission has been hearing from our own actuary, from the plan's actuaries, and frankly, nationwide. We're an outlier right now at 7.5, so going to 7% is an improvement. It makes our assumptions more conservative, and that is good, as Senator Frentz mentioned, for Wall Street, for the credit rating.
Thank you. And Ms. Lancheski, can you identify yourself for the record as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Susan Lancheski, Director of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement.
And the additional money that we're putting into the funds, how much, the funds is well-funded, even if we're at the 7% with this amount of money, or is it something where we are going to have to be looking at that further?
Senator, all the funds are at different stages of underfunding. So the money that is going in is going to reduce underfunding. That was caused in part by the change from 7.5 to 7. It doesn't entirely fix the problem. There will be more to say on this in the future, but as long as we have another great year of investment returns, we should be on par or on track for continuing sustainability.
Senator Frentz, you look like you're ready to comment on something.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just smiling because, of course, as we know, past results of investing are a guarantee of future results. And Ms. Lancheski's point is, these are simply estimates we're making of the funding status based on this rate of return at 7%. We don't know for sure. Turns out, I was surprised to learn, investment returns vary from year to year. So the funding status was affected significantly in 2020 by excellent year in the market, and maybe this will be a great year. Then again.
Thank you. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate the reduction from 7.5 to 7. You know, quite honestly, I wish it were probably more in line with 6 or 6.5, as you know, some of the more seasoned investors, like Warren Buffett, would say over the long term for public funds is maybe a more realistic long-term goal. But I think this is certainly in the right direction. We want our pension funds assuming a conservative average return and potentially having more, let's say, increasing the probability that we'll see benefits on the upside rather than benefits on the downside over the long term. So I think it's a good move. I hope we continue to move to a little bit more conservative stance. Senator Frentz, you talked about Article 5, and I've heard a little bit about that. Maybe you can, it sounds like this was, with the St. Paul teachers, this was really a good compromise that we were able to come up with from the standpoint that we understand contributions were based on one retirement benefit and set, and there's an increased contribution by the participants as well. And maybe you can just share a little bit more on that compromise.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Pratt. Yeah, I'm kind of pleased with what St. Paul teachers were able to demonstrate here. So members, as you know, we're putting one-time money into each of the funds. This particular fund had an interest in the retirement benefit for teachers, fine. And instead of saying, good, we got more money, that's fine, they actually elected to increase the employee contribution, in this case the teachers, and get an additional employer contribution. And with that, they were able to fund a change in their retirement. These are the details of the retirement change, Senator Pratt. The new benefit is that for all members retiring on or after July 1st of this year, they must have at least age 62 and 30 years of service, and then they receive an unreduced annuity. You may know that, of course, teachers and lots of state employees can retire early, but they don't get their full pension. This group of St. Paul teachers are now able to retire under those circumstances with a full unreduced pension. And it has some echoes of Rule of 90, but what happened is that group of employees said, you know what, we'll chip in more if we can get a better benefit. And you may know, Senator Pratt, a little forward spin here, that the larger group, Education Minnesota and TRA, sort of going through some discussions about whether that might be possible. Seems counterintuitive for an employee to say, hey, I'd like to raise my contribution. I sure want a little more taken out of my paycheck. But this group of teachers said, in exchange for this benefit improvement, we'll take it.
I'm sorry. Ms. Lancheski, the appropriation for the actuary, it's one time. I'm curious, are you hiring somebody to do a one-time actuarial look through everything, or is this something that it's going to be sort of a consultant that you're hiring because this is one-time funding? What's the expectation here?
Yeah, Senator Marty, thank you. We have been running into some shortfalls and trying to do the actuarial valuations on bills that have been coming in and on ideas for plan design changes. So we would possibly be able to increase the benefit if we knew what the cost was to the plans. And we sometimes hesitate to rely on the plan actuaries to come up with those cost estimates. This will allow us, it is a one-time amount of money, but we'll be able to use that next year, next session, as well as in future sessions as the need arises to run these cost estimates. We aren't going to actually hire an actuary. We have one retained, our own actuary. We've had an actuary retained, outside actuary for years, and this will just allow us to go to that actuary for some more cost estimates.
Okay, so it's just you're enhancing what you already have. You're using them on and off as you need them.
Yes.
Is there further discussion of the bill? If not, Senator Frentz moves that House File 3100 be recommended to pass.
I do, Mr. Chair, and I want to just add, thank you for hearing the bill. Thank you, members. A quick thank you to the authors of the bill. Our Pension Commission members on the DFL side include authors Senator Pappas, Senator Murphy, and Senator Seeberger, and Senator Rasmussen serves for the minority party, and he's an author of the bill as well. I'm not doing my job if I don't thank the pension chair, Representative Kali Herr, Ms. Lencheski, the whole staff, Mr. Erickson. So with that, members, I hope you'll consider voting yes on the bill.
On House File 3100, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you. Senator Frentz will move right away to House File 1234. Peace Officer Disability Provisions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm presenting to you a bill for your consideration, House File 1234. This relates to law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, duty disability, in particular post-traumatic stress disorder. First, Mr. Chair, there is an A3 amendment, I believe, at the desk, and I'd like to speak to that
It's
briefly.
not in the packets, it's being distributed right now. So, while it's being distributed, maybe you can explain what it does, because
Sure. Members, to say that this bill has had a lot of stakeholder input would be an understatement. Amongst the input is a concern about one of the provisions having to do with an employee who has had their employer contest their health care benefits and their willingness or ability to compromise that. The A3 amendment removes that provision. And the removal is a recognition of new information about the cost to the employee to go to the administrative law judge process. In simple terms, it costs anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000, and by law, those costs are shared. So imagine if you're an employee and you're seeking those health care benefits, either whole or in part. Your employer says, well, you may have got para-duty disability payments, but I'm contesting your health benefits, and you're told that your share of the contest, whether you win or lose, would be anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000 for the total. So for that reason, the A3 amendment removes that. That cost information really just confirmed in the last day or so.
thank you. Is there discussion on the A3 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is the duty disability PTSD bill that you may have been hearing about. First, what the bill does is provides treatment for men and women who serve our state in public safety. PTSD is a diagnosis that is better understood than it was 20 or 30 years ago, and in my opinion, a little bit less of a stigma attached for Minnesotans who may be suffering from it. The treatment parameters are the first point of order in the bill. 24 weeks of treatment are now required and provided for, and by provided for, I mean not only paid for, but the employee gets to continue at full salary and with full benefits. So if a doctor diagnoses a Minnesotan with PTSD, they're now eligible for 24 weeks of whatever the best treatment we can provide for that person. Part of our challenges in recruiting in all the professions, teachers, nurses, paramedics, is that we would like to have them stay in their chosen profession. This treatment hopefully takes some of the trauma associated with PTSD and improves it to the point where they can remain in their job. The treatment is also now going to be a requirement for that member of the public safety community to be eligible for the duty disability pension. As many of you know, the frequency of duty disability retirements has increased sharply. That puts members in a position where if they cannot resume, they get a tax-free duty disability pension and hopefully health care. So that's a duty disability similar to a work comp disability or other disability available in state plans. There is an offset provision in the bill, which I'll get to in a minute. However, you should understand that 24 weeks of treatment is now required for the employee to be eligible to receive the duty disability pension. That's a key part of the bill. And our hope is that we will encourage treatment and make that not only something that we pay for, but keep the employee paid during the time of the treatment. In an ideal world, a large number of those Minnesotans will receive treatment, benefit them, and they can return to the work that they wanted to do. The reimbursement of the public plans, and the bill appropriates $100 million for this part, one-time money, is that those plans have been stressed or depleted, we talked about the funding status, by the frequency of these claims, so that the bill reimburses those plans for the costs associated with it. The bill also reimburses the employers, so that if you represent the great city of Minneapolis, for example, there is stress put on the municipal budget, the more there are duty, disability, health claims to pay. And so this money will reimburse cities like Minneapolis for the costs associated with those health benefits. Again, we'll provide those benefits to the employee, but we are reimbursing. A note for Mr. Nauman, this is a $100 million one-time appropriation, and so lacking an ongoing budget for this, we are creating a fund in this bill to reimburse these employers, the cities, counties, whatever, that is not infinite. So that we have had estimates, and we went through state government recently where we estimated 3-4 years at the, some of our actuarial guesses, and we'll have to readdress this again. There's a change in the vesting. We're also transferring the $100 million from the general fund to this public safeties officers benefit account. There's $4 million from the general fund to help with the treatment accounts, and there's an offset. Members, if you are a state senator of Minnesota, you must have received an email from a member of the already duty disabled community who is looking at the bill and making changes to what we're calling the offsets. This takes a little bit of explanation, Mr. Chair, and as you serve your constituents, I hope that you'll take a minute to understand this part of it, because I present this bill to you as this basic. The offset is really where about 80% of the questions and concerns are coming from. So a couple things as we start out. If you're a state trooper and you are disabled from work and you qualify for a duty disability pension, you receive 100% of your pension. And if you are able to reemploy, go out and do something else, your doctor says you can't be a trooper, but you can do this job, there's a dollar for dollar offset in the amount that you receive from your pension. In other words, you can't earn more than the duty disability pension. In the benefits package that our public safety men and women have now, reemployment earnings are allowed. So if your doctor says you can't be a firefighter, but you can go out and earn more, that is allowed, but there's an offset provision. Offset basically means that part of your disability pension has to be kicked back into the fund. In public safety, that's MSRS or para-police and fire. In workers' comp, there's no reemployment. You simply reduce your work comp benefits by the amount you earn. However, if you are already in the duty disability community, and there are, I think, about 700 that are in that category now, and another 500 in the last 4 or 5 years that have been declared eligible, and you are already at a reemployment earnings level of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, the offsets take a somewhat of a chunk and credit it back to the plan. The reasons for this are twofold. One, want to protect the integrity of the fund. We've just brought the Omnibus bill in front of you, hoping to reduce the assumed rate of return so that the funding status is adequate, and this allows the funds, para-police and fire and MSRS, to continue to not have to pay out as much, hopefully keeping the fund from depleting. As the PTSD claims have gone up, of course, the funds are under stress. That's part of what's going on here. And the reason you want to understand that stress on the fund is that while we want to care and provide for the treatment for the duty disability community, there's a far larger number of active members and already retired members who really do give quite a hoot about the funding status. Members who may have joined the firefighters in St. Cloud 5 years ago, they care quite a bit about the funding status for when they hope to retire with a full pension, let's say, in 25 years. So the first thing is you don't want to deplete the funds. You want all these members to chip in their fair share, and the offset does that. The second one, and this is a little bit more nuanced, and I respect everybody in the duty disability community that contributed to these discussions, is there is a hope that there's an equity or partnership in the funds where active members, retired members, and duty disabled members each have a share in contributing to the fund. And so that if you are, Mr. Chair, a firefighter from North Mankato, and you run into burning buildings to save some stranger's child, and you receive your full salary, and another member who's duty disabled, who has a disability but is able to do another job, is getting their full pension and earning another $80,000. In an example we use sometimes, that would be annual earnings of $180,000. You may say, well, I don't know that contributing the same amount to the fund is fair. And so the offsets are an attempt to make equity between the members, active, retired, and duty disability. If you retired with duty disability under the assumption that those rules would never change, then this is a change that costs you more money. And it is more noticeable for those members of the public safety community for whom the reemployment earnings are $50,000 or $60,000 a year or more. And while a state trooper or someone on work comp might say, I can't have any reemployment earnings and get the full pension or work comp, it is a change. And so if you're receiving emails from members of your community who are like, hey, I don't like this is unfair, they are entitled to say, this is a change I didn't know about. Given the funding status of the plans, given the equity, I'm suggesting to you that the better plan is to do it this way, even though it is tough. And I've used this comparison, including the burning building, Mr. Chair. All of us make tough decisions. Members of the public safety community make tough decisions. The leadership of these groups, including the Minnesota professional firefighters, Minnesota police officers, the chiefs, the sheriffs, all support the bill as written with the offsets. And it is their job, I think, to speak for all members, active, retired, and duty disabled. Tough decision? Yes. Necessary to preserve the equity and the health of the fund? I think so. I do respect the members of the duty disability community that have spoken to this, and I realize there's a human part to that in addition to the fiscal part. What I'm asking members of the Finance Committee to do is pass this bill as amended. By the way, it does already not match up exactly with the other body, as an oral amendment went on in Senator Murphy's committee. While it is not a big one, and while we've amended the bill here, we have to have a few more conversations. I did speak with Senator Pratt and other members of the caucus who have texted or called with concerns about this. And as always, I'm open to the Senate taking into account all views and trying to come up with a winning solution. With that, Mr. Chair, that's the bill, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Discussion from the committee. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I serve with Senator Frentz on the Pension Commission, and so I've heard a great deal of testimony about this proposal and understand why it's moving. I do think, especially as Senator Frentz has talked a lot about the value of treatment and returning to work, that it is important, and having fresh and new personal experience with this, it is important to recognize that our healthcare system is depleted when it comes to the care and treatment of people with post-traumatic stress disorder, with mental health issues. And so while I understand that this is important, it is built upon the assumption that people are going to get the help that they need. And right now, the guarantee of the help that you need for such an injury is not always reliable everywhere in the state. And I don't think we should pass this without acknowledging that. It's important that people get the care that they need, especially if we expect them to return to work. And I believe providers are going to do that, but the system is just so under-resourced right now. And I think it is important that we are clear about that as we take this important step. And we do have to do this work. So I just want to make sure that's on the record, Mr. Chair.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair?
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Murphy. You could not be more right about our need to continue to be able to provide treatment. And there's another element that you touched on, if you don't mind, which is, whatever kind of human you are, talking about mental challenges, PTSD, the need for treatment is not as easy as we hope it would be. And hopefully what we're saying is it's okay to come forward and say you need this type of treatment. By the way, I hope we can provide it, right? But I appreciate that. And one of the things in the public safety community is not always anxious to come forward and say that they need that help. And we came to this work 6 years ago after a suicide of a firefighter, and his family was disappointed that they weren't able to come forward. So thank you for that, Senator.
Should we have Mr. Erickson go through the appropriations in the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the appropriations and transfers you'll find in the bill begin on page 39. And you'll see that on line 39.30, there was a $1 million transfer to the MSRS psychological condition treatment account. And there's a corresponding transfer of $3 million on line 40.1 to the para psychological condition treatment account. These transfers are because the use of the actual pension funds for the purposes in the bill is not allowed under existing law, and so they need a separate pot of money to do the administration. You'll find those accounts created on pages 14 and 30, where you'll see the accounts are created, the money is appropriated out of the accounts. Because the amount is one time, it is allowed to be spent down for administrative costs, and when the account is depleted, the Commissioner of Public Safety may be invoiced by MSRS for the remaining administrative costs. Returning back to page 40, you'll see on line 40.7 the $100 million transfer from the general fund into the Public Safety Officer's Benefit Account, which is used to provide the reimbursements that Senator Frentz was speaking of. And Mr. Nauman is giving me a look saying that you should really say that's one time because, as Senator Frentz knows, this one's for Eric.
And Mr. Erickson or whomever, how long is that 100 million likely to last?
I believe it is about 3 to 4 years, Mr. Chair.
Questions from the committee? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think there's a lot of good work that's gone into this bill. I've talked to those that are on duty disability now. I've talked to active members. It's a really tough issue. On the positive side, one of the things I see is the increase in salary for the permanent disability folks. And Senator Jasinski and I, a few years ago, we switched off authorship, but carried a study in order to do that. One of my questions, Mr. Chair, though, is really, and we talk about the bill on page, I think it was 14, about the relationship with workers' compensation. And as we talk about this $100 million in reimbursement back to cities, I'm wondering can somebody explain the relationship with workers' compensation? Because it seems to me that this is certainly the type of claim that would fit within that category. And I'm curious why we're not relying more on workers' comp for these workplace injuries.
I think I can tackle that, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you, Senator Pratt, and thank you for your engagement on the bill as a whole. Look forward to talking to you about it. First of all, in subdivision 12 on page 14, part of the treatment cannot be compensable under Chapter 176, so that is the work comp statute 176. But generally speaking, the retirement benefits are a benefit that you pay for, so that the employee says, I'll give you guys this much money, and duty disability is a part of the benefit. The retirement's really the big benefit. You hope to work a long career and then get to 55 and then you retire. But this is a benefit, and it's also worth pointing, so it's separate. It's also worth pointing out that the bill here today in front of you clarifies that nothing in this bill affects any work comp rights that you'd be allowed to have. As an attorney, I can tell you typically there's an offset, a coordination of benefits. You may be familiar with medical subrogation. If you're not, that's okay. Preventing a double recovery. Mm-hmm. But in particular, we're here about duty, disability, and pensions. And subdivision 12 makes it clear that whatever goes on for the employee in the duty disability world does not affect their rights in work comp, notwithstanding the offset. And also that the treatment that we're mandating here, we're saying the employee's got to go get 24 weeks of treatment for PTSD, is not compensable under workers' comp. Does that make any sense?
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Frentz, well, I'm really thinking more about that initial 24 weeks. I understand the duty disability falls under the pension piece, but it's that 24 weeks that I'm really interested in, because to me, that's the work comp treatment, the benefits for that injury and the treatment of that injury, just like if it were a back injury, so to speak. Why we're making, some differentiation and why some of these benefits aren't being covered more by work comp.
Sure. Well, think of it this way. Nothing in this bill prevents an employee from seeking work comp, and a public safety employee is no different. They may break their arm or shatter their hip, and they have the right to pursue work comp. However, these employees have an additional protection they've paid for the coverage under the duty disability part of their pension bill. So think of it in this way. If you were to purchase a disability plan, Senator Pratt, at your job, and you said, I'll give you $100 a month, and it says, well, if you're disabled from work, we'll pay your salary for up to this percent for up to this many years. And then you were injured in work comp, you would be allowed to treat those separately. You would say, all right, my work comp rights are this, your employer may contest it, they may pay it. You may say, well, my doctor says I'm able to go back to work at 6 weeks. You say, no, it's 10 weeks. All of that, those rights are retained. But you have also paid for a benefit under your disability policy, and most of those plans say you're entitled to that money regardless of what you do or do not get in work comp. Same type of philosophy here. These Minnesotans have paid and chipped in with their employee contributions to get this protection, and are not therefore subject to the 24 weeks having to go to work comp first. This probably won't surprise you, but of course the rules of evidence, the burden of proof are somewhat different in work comp than they are here in pensions. So that a whole nother meeting, and I would guess the labor committee could be had on what it takes to win in work comp. It's different here. Generally, duty disability goes through the para administrators, where you say, hey, I'm disabled, you provide your medical information, and the para directors say, we approve it. Actually, 2 years ago, Mr. Chair and members, this was the subject of some discussion in the Pension Commission. Para approved roughly 97% of the duty disability claims. And I said, sort of parenthetically, yeah, we're not seeing 97% of work comp claims that are contested succeed. It's right about 50.0.
Senator Brett, is it?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Senator Frentz, as you and I have talked, I've got a real concern with the people who are currently on duty disability, that we've made them a promise. And it feels like we're changing that promise after they've agreed to it. I really like the changes going forward, as you and I have talked. They are changes that will be more equitable with other plans, which I think is a good move. I'm just really worried about the fact that we've got that we've made promises that we are now trying to not keep. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I would offer the A2 amendment.
Senator Pratt offers an A2 amendment. For members who are online, it's not posted yet. We'll get it as quickly as possible. Is it posted? She still doesn't have it yet. It's on its way. Now apparently it's been sent to everyone at least, so. Senator Pratt, go ahead on the A2 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair and Senator Frentz, like I say, I think there's a lot of good work that's gone into this. I like the plan. going forward. The concern I have is for those that are already receiving the benefit under the promises that we made. And so, Mr. Chair, what this does is take $2.5 million out of the $100 million reimbursement account being established in this bill and funds that over to para to cover at least 1 year of these benefits while we continue to have the conversation about transitioning current duty disability members over. When you talk to these men and women, they've got some really compelling stories to tell about not only how they're personally impacted, but the concerns that they have for their family and how they've looked at all of these were decisions that were made over a period of time, and how they were going to be able to support their families. And so this is just, like I say, simply we're expecting that, based on what Senator Frentz said, this is going to be roughly a $25 million a year reimbursement back to cities and counties. I think a $2.5 million redistribution of that back to para to buy us a little more time to work on some things that Senator Frentz and I have been talking about as around compromise on how we might be able to be fair to the active members that are still being our first responders, but also I think being empathetic to those who are currently on duty disability. It's a simple amendment, and I would encourage members to vote yes.
Senator Frentz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt. Your concern for the members of the duty disability community who may have retired with one expectation but now are finding the bill in front of them to change that is well stated. I share those concerns. Having said that, members, you should vote no on this amendment for 2 reasons. First of all, I've already received 3 texts from stakeholders using various levels of inflammatory text language. It would badly upset the current agreement amongst the roughly 15 stakeholders. Senator Pratt mentioned the active members. If we do not pass this bill, para has estimated each active member of the public safety community in the para police and fire plan might be looking at $1,000 a year every year ongoing, taken out of their check. So $2.5 million to them sounds quite significant. And the second one relates to the simple question of equity. If we change the targets and adjust the money to one group, then our hoped-for balance between actives, retired, and duty disability would be upset, and I would imagine quickly we would have members of the public safety community saying, we did not agree to move the needle, and without passing the bill, we're looking at significant impact on the plans and the members. So while I appreciate the sentiment in favor, I would ask members to vote no on the amendment. However, I do want to make clear that discussions with all the members of the Senate and the members of the community are appropriate as we go forward. I'm asking members to send this amendment down and send the bill to the floor. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions about the amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the A2 amendment say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion does not prevail. Sorry about that. Further discussion on the bill? If not, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, let me just say, Mr. Chair, I appreciate a lot of the work that's been done in this. I think there's the ongoing piece of this is extremely well thought out, and I still have concerns about the impact to our local, to the people currently on duty disability. I would say that as the Finance Committee, we should be making these changes here in Finance and not on the floor, as Senator Frentz indicated. We just saw that with an extra $18 million expenditure without having gone through Finance on the cannabis bill. And I think I don't think it's a good way for us to be doing business. And I would hope that we could continue to work on this bill. I'll be voting no again. I'll be voting no so that we can continue to do that work here in the committee where it belongs.
Further discussion on the bill? If not, Senator Frentz.
Yeah, just want to say thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to all the members for a thoughtful discussion. I agree, we prefer to take care of some of these things in finance. I'm just indicating in this particular situation, I think there's always discussion, and we do amend on the floor once in a while, and hopefully often for the benefit of Minnesota. With that, asking members to pass the bill as amended.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor of Senator Frentz moves that House File 1234 as amended be recommended to pass. On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevails.
Thank you,
Thank
members.
you,
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
Frentz and Ms. Glencheski and Mr. Erickson. One more bill on the agenda, Senator Pappas, is House File 782, Minnesota Secure Choice Retirement Program.
Do you need your secure choice?
Yes. All right, thanks.
And members, we are going to be working off the Senate file language. The House file is for the committee, but the language we're going to be working off of is Senate File 413, I believe, Senator Pappas?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I did notice one error in the Senate file, and that's on page 2, line 215, that employees, 10 or more covered employees should be 5 or more covered employees. That was already a compromise I made with the House. We're working off the Senate file.
So Senator Pappas, you would be moving to amend line 15 on page 2, strike the word 10 and insert 5?
Yes.
Or is that,
Mr. Chair, I'm working off the Senate. Oh,
go ahead?
I'm working off the Senate file, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I mentioned it. So the House file has the 5 in it, I gather? That's why
Yes.
there was puzzlement behind you? Okay.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd move on line 215 to delete 10 and insert 5.
On that motion, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Pappas, so this would make more employers, more small businesses have to comply with this law by moving it from 10 to 5 and putting an additional strain on our Main Street businesses.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pratt, this is really an amazing benefit that small business employees can offer their employers can offer their employees without having to make any contribution themselves. So the small businesses I've talked to are really very excited. And originally, Senator Rasmussen and I had discussed 10 or less employees would not be required to participate, although they always can. And in kind of pre-negotiations with the House, which had all employees covered, we agreed to a compromise that 5 or more would be covered. But again, those very, very small businesses would still be allowed to participate if they wish. And, Mr. Chairman, I think this was a particular interest on Representative Becker-Finn because she is one of those employees. She has 9 employees, and she kind of represents that small business community that really does want to participate.
You bet.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the amendment, it seems to me, Senator Pappas, that let's take that example that you said. The question is whether or not the benefit is available or the benefit is mandated. Can you tell me that if the language were to remain the same, that business would be prohibited from complying? And what we're really doing is pushing the mandate down to more of our small businesses that don't have the payroll systems to accommodate this mandate. And that's the concern that I have. When I think of my local restaurants, when I think of my local boutiques, they don't have big fancy payroll systems. They're probably still doing it on paper checks. And that's the concern I have. So to your point, if Representative Becker-Finn wants to offer this, even though she only has 9 employees, she has that option versus being required to do it. And that's the effect of the amendment. Am I correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Pratt, even these small employers, they have to withdraw for Social Security, they have to withdraw for taxes, they have to withdraw for workers' compensation. It's just one more line. So it's very, very minimal in terms of the additional paperwork.
Further discussion on Senator Pappas's oral amendment on page 2, line 15, to strike 10 and insert 5. Not all those, Senator Dames.
I'll pass until after the amendment.
Okay. If not, on the oral amendment to change strike 10 and insert 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
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 Motion prevails.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman. If I could do my opening comments then.
Go ahead, Senator Pappas.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Minnesota is facing a retirement crisis. Declines in employer-sponsored pensions and lack of savings impact people's ability to achieve a secure retirement. Nearly half of Americans nearing retirement age have less than $25,000 put away, while 1 in 4 has less than $1,000 in savings. In Minnesota, 32% of private sector employees, approximately 700,000 individuals, work for an employer that does not offer a retirement plan. And employees of color are significantly less likely to have access to workplace retirement plans. Today, 16 states have either passed laws or have pending legislation that outlines new programs for private sector workers. Of that number, 8 states have implemented the program with positive results. To get ahead of the retirement savings crisis and help workers save for their future, the bill before you establishes the Secure Choice Program, a public-private partnership for retirement savings that allows workers to set aside wages through an easily accessible auto IRA plan. And Mr. Chairman, in your packet, I really wanted to point out the American Retirement Association, which represents 5 affiliate organizations that represent the full spectrum of America's private retirement system, do support this legislation. In states where it's been implemented, they've actually found that there's an increase in employers offering 401k plans, because an employer may say, oh, hey, the state requires me to do this auto IRA, but you know what, I can't contribute to that. And wow, I'd like to contribute to this plan for my employee. So I'm going to go to the private sector and set up a 401k. And Pew Charitable Trust, which also supports this bill, has done research that's also proved that it's better for everyone. So I'm really very happy that the American Retirement Association has really come on board to support this legislation. They say in the letter you have, they believe that Senate File 413 strikes the proper balance to close the retirement plan coverage gap in the private sector workforce to the greatest extent possible while imposing the minimum possible burden on Minnesota's employers.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. There's question from Senator Dames, I believe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is that we're putting in another mandate and another requirement on small businesses. And a lot of these small businesses are not going to be able to survive. And Senator Pappas, you stated, well, it's just another small thing because they're doing workers' comp, or not work comp, but they're doing Social Security, Medicare, and whatever. And so this is just another little added subtraction that they make, or another little job that they have to do. We're to the point to where every little job they have to do is going to start taking these people out of business. It's very interesting as I watch this session progress. It's been very interesting to see how many different things have been around for years and years. And now when the opportunity's there that you can pass them, we're passing all this legislation. We're not doing it with the input of business and with the support of businesses. And we're really just telling our businesses that we don't want you in Minnesota. So I'm going to be a no vote on this. And I really hope that we start putting some serious thought into these things that we keep, these mandates we keep passing for our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Dames. You know, in a way, it is kind of, well, it is the way it is. When you look, though, at other requirements, and I have one of them myself, I have earned sick and safe time. This is really such a minimal requirement, and it actually, I think, will help small businesses have a kind of an equal competition with larger businesses. There's a workforce shortage, and when a large business is offering them a retirement plan and a small business is not, and you're kind of weighing, you know, and a large business is offering me, you know, PTO and small business is not, you're kind of weighing all these issues. I think this is a way that we actually are helping small businesses to be more competitive with larger businesses because it's an automatic, and it's an automatic system. And it's really, when we think about the future strain on public systems and on our Social Security system, it's really a much more of a conservative approach for us to say, hey, we want workers to save. We want them to be more self-sufficient when they retire. You know, I think of my great aunt who was in her final years, was really living on $1,200 in Social Security because she personally didn't have a private retirement plan. Her husband did, and she, you know, got some of his retirement after he passed away, but she didn't have her own plan for the years during which she worked. And so I think this is really going to help us in the future to keep down costs. There's been estimates in other states that have implemented this in terms of keeping down welfare costs, keeping down the need for food stamps, for all kinds of housing assistance, if you can actually have your own savings. So you'll get your Social Security, and maybe you'll have, you know, money if you were lucky enough to be a homeowner from the sale of your house. But this is kind of the third leg. Your own private savings plan. And for a lot of individuals, they don't feel comfortable with the stock market. If they do, like I've talked to Senator Rasmussen, and he said he feels comfortable, but he's not sure his parents do. If you're not comfortable with that, you've got the State Board of Investment, which has a great rate of return. You know, they're kind of a great investor that for very low minimal fees will do all the investing for you. And you can just sit back and know that that money is being put away in a savings account for you.
Senator Pappas, before we go through with more questions and discussion, I wonder if we could have Mr. Erickson go through the financial provisions in the bill.
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to do that. There's a fiscal note for the bill that illustrates a lot of the administrative costs of setting up the Secure Choice Board, Retirement Program Board, and they are mostly related to the programming or a vendor that might be needed to set up a lot of the stuff, the staff, interagency costs for the State Board of Investment, and things of those nature. Now, the structure of the bill is actually to have this become self-funding over time, funded through an administrative fee that's assessed on money that is deposited in the account, but obviously at the start of the program, there won't be any funds in the account to assess a fee on. So the bill as drafted contemplates a one-time sort of startup money to get that going. And to see where that's happening in the bill, if you go to page 5 of Senate File 413, you'll see there is a Secure Choice Administrative Fund established and money appropriated. Thank you. So just because some of this is a little bit technical, because of how it's set up, I'll walk through it maybe a little more in depth than usual. So in paragraph A, you'll see that the Secure Choice Administrative Fund is established in the State Treasury as a fund separate and apart from the Secure Choice Trust. So there's no commingling of money that is in the trust and that is designated to pay benefits at a future date with the funds that the Secure Choice Board is allowed to use for administrative purposes. In paragraph B, you're going to see that where the Board of Directors can assess those administrative fees to be applied toward the expense of administering the program, and then immediately following the money in the fund is appropriated statutorily to pay the administrative expenses if the fees from the trust are not sufficient. So there's this ability to use the money in the account that as it's coming in, excuse me, I actually skipped a step there, that on paragraph C, we have the receiving and depositing in the fund of gifts, grants, donations, loans, appropriations, other monies designated for the administrative fund. So you have money coming into that account and for administrative purposes and then going back out. Because that doesn't help in those first couple of years, we can go to page 13, and section 12 of the bill for now has a couple of blank transfers to make that. I believe there is an amendment that is on its way down that would fill in these blanks with a one-time transfer of $5 million, which is what is incorporated into the pensions target that we've heard a lot about. So $5 million, the last $5 million of the $600 million target of one-time money will be filled in here, hopefully briefly.
Good. Any comments, anything from the fiscal note you want to point out?
Nothing else special in the fiscal note. Most of the costs are absorbed. The governor's office absorbing costs of making appointments. The investment board has revolving transfers in for their work, and then the expenditures out of there. The attorney general does report some costs related to legal issues. This bill doesn't fund those and says the attorney general can absorb those costs.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Senator Dames took down your hand. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair Marty, and thank you, Mr. Erickson, for the comments on the fiscal note. Doesn't the fiscal note have the assumption that it's based on 10 or more employees, and will the effects be if we lower it 5?
Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's correct because the fiscal note would have been drawn to the actual second engrossment. The difference in what those amounts would be, I don't think would end up being substantial. It might be a little bit higher, but just looking at the top line, they're reporting 1.3 million or so for the first biennium and 1.8 million for the second biennium. So it's still well under the 5 million cap, and I believe an earlier version of the fiscal note was completed when it was down to 1 employee, and I think that was closer to 5 million, but it was still under. Does that help, Senator Draheim?
It does. Thank you. If I could, Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Draheim.
Isn't this drafted that kind of like a savings account where they can pull out money with no penalty? Is that correct, Mr. Erickson?
Mr. Chair, I think I would defer on that point to Ms. Lincheski.
Ms. Lincheski, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Draheim, these are Roth IRA accounts. So when the money is deposited, the default is into a Roth IRA in the participant's name. So they would be able to withdraw their funds. There are some limitations on how long it has to be in the Roth account before they can withdraw it. But it is true that they would have access to that money.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, just to follow up on Senator Draheim's question
Sure,
real
Senator
quick.
Pratt.
So Ms. Lincheski, I'm looking at line 4.22 subdivision 6. It says the board must establish alternatives permitting covered employees to take a withdrawal of all or a portion of the covered employee's account while employed in one or more distributions following termination of employment, which seems to me to follow up with Senator Draheim's concern that this is basically acting as a savings account, not truly an investment or IRA.
Yes.
Ms. Lincheski, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, that is true. The board has a number of things that it needs to take care of when it starts this program, one of which is to determine whether withdrawals will be permitted and what types of distribution options will be available. For instance, they could set up access to annuities, so somebody who has a, $20,000 account would be able to take it out in annuities. So that's to allow the board to determine what those withdrawal options will be and what kind of distributions will be available.
Mr. Chair, follow up.
Senator Pratt.
It seems to me, Ms. Lincheski, that you're being statutorily required to provide those withdrawals.
Ms. Lanczewski, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, I think that is true, that the board is to establish alternatives for allowing withdrawals. So yes, that is correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
I think, Mr. Chairman, this is just really looking at realistically at kind of life choices that potentially low-income people have, is that sometimes there is an emergency, a medical emergency, in which they would unfortunately need to withdraw part of this from the savings account. And so the board will look at kind of limited options, hopefully, in which those withdrawals would be allowed.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Senator Pappas, you know, many retirement accounts provide the opportunity to take loans against the accounts. You can borrow against your 401k. I don't know that, you know, and that's available to anybody, right? And even when, you know, even when I was in the corporate world, we had, you know, people who were making very high salaries, people that were, you know, making very low salaries, but all had the opportunity to participate, all had the same opportunities to borrow from their accounts and participate in those accounts. And so I disagree with your assessment that what we're really doing is just trying to give them a savings account with a market rate or let's say an equity-based return. But again, as Ms. Lanczewski said, there are rules around Roth IRAs that you seem to be trying to statutorily go around. And I've got concerns with how those two pieces will match up. That the federal government has established how you can withdraw from your Roth, but yet we have this statutory requirement bypassing those federal rules.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pratt, we can't bypass those federal rules. I mean, the board would have to take those rules into account.
We were on a question, I believe, from Senator Draheim. Senator Draheim, did we finish with your questions?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Nauman.
Mr. Chair, we're going to throw Senator Pappas a little bit of a curveball here, so my apologies. As Mr. Erickson alluded to earlier, when we began working off the Senate file, we realized that the transfer language was left with blanks in the Senate version. And so this amendment most centrally brings the, excuse me, the transfer language from the House file into the Senate file. And then after this amendment is adopted, if it's adopted, the assumption is when you're concluded with your work, the approach will be to lay it on the table, take the contents of the Senate file and put it into the House file, and then everything will be in order. I think you have that motion.
I have that
That's
motion.
what you're indicating to me. So if we had just taken the Senate file without fixing the transfer language, we would have lost all of the transfers that are, I think, correctly drawn in the House file. In addition to making Grossing's life a little bit easier, the amendment that you previously adopted to do the change from 10 to 5 employees is also in the A6 amendment, which has now been handed out. So we hope this is housekeeping, and I thought it was worth going through a little bit of explanation so that the author knew what we were about to impose upon our bill at a staff level. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nauman.
And it's very nearly ready, Mr. Chair, but one technical change, the head note should be singular transfer instead of transfers.
So with the A6 amendment and the head note saying transfer instead of transfers, Senator Pappas moves the A6 amendment. Is there discussion of that amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Chair is in doubt. Raise your, those online will have to raise their hands. All those in favor say, raise your hand. All those, how many you got? All those opposed? There being how many? 7 ayes and 4 nays, the motion prevails. On the Senator, I can't tell, Senator Dames, is your hand raised for the vote still, or is this you have a question? Or
It was raised for the vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Senate File 413. Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds like we're starting to wrap up here. And let me just say, that I am really concerned for, let me ask a question, Mr. Chair, before I start. Senator Pappas, if I recall, you made the claim that fewer companies are offering retirement benefits. Can you cite your source on that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe I said that. I just said, I'm looking for my comments. Yes, I did. I said, in Minnesota, 32% of private sector employees, approximately 700,000 individuals, work for an employer that does not offer a retirement plan. Good question. Where are my sources? I'd have to go back and check and get back to you on that. I don't have my full file with me.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair, I've got some serious concerns about this bill. This isn't about helping out our, our large corporations are already offering these benefits. They're offering them to every employer. I'm worried about the restaurants on Main Street, Prior Lake. I'm worried about the boutique shops on First Avenue in Shakopee. I'm worried about the small businesses on Broadway and Water Street in Jordan that will now have to comply with a new mandate. And Senator Pappas can say it's just a small little thing, upon small little thing, upon small little thing, upon small little thing that we continue to do. I think the bill is unrealistic in that we are effectively trying to create an account that works like a savings account, but trying to proposition it as an investment account and a retirement account. And I can tell you, Mr. Chair, having worked for one of our local banking institutions, that there is a great deal of work trying to get the unbanked and underbanked to save some of their money. The fact that this is mandatory versus an option is problematic. We're not giving the employee, well, we're giving the employee a choice to opt out, but we're not giving the employee an option to opt in. They're being forced to opt in. And I think it shows quite a bit of hubris for us to say, we know what's better for you, small employee, small business employee. We know what's better for you. We don't know that you can afford that amount of money taken out of your paycheck every month. You may not know that you have the option to opt out. But that's okay. Minnesota DFL caucus knows better than you. We set up an unelected board to manage this program. And while on the face of it, it seems like they are, relatively qualified based on what I saw, the fact of the matter is it's still an unelected board that is having to manage these funds. And we're setting up yet another bureaucracy. So we're not asking the businesses what they need. The fact of the matter is, as I've said before, We've done a number of things that say, well, we're just helping small businesses compete. They don't need our help. They're already trying to compete. When it comes to paid family medical leave, they're trying to compete to attract employees with their own programs. When it comes to safe and sick time, they're already working with their employees to take time off. Any employee can walk into a bank. Any employee can walk in and set up a Roth account and contribute to it. There are options that don't require a state mandate that I would believe likely work on a lower fee schedule than what we're going to see through this program. And in the meantime, our micro businesses, those employing 5, 6, 7 people, are going to be saddled with a massive headache to have to deal with this. And you know, there's no guarantee that these rates will continue. We just saw a 30% downturn in the market last year. And I remember having conversations with Senator Pappas a few years ago when she said, well, these companies haven't recovered from the market turndown in 2009. And yet we were seeing at that time record returns. Now we're seeing a dip in the market and we're telling these people, well, we're going to give you these great returns through the state investment board. It's unrealistic. And what happens if there is a downturn? The pressure is going to be for us to step up and make those employees whole. And no one is protecting the employee who gets a Roth IRA through their local community bank. Nobody's protecting the employee that gets their 401k through their employer. Mr. Chair, this is, if this were optional for an employee, if this were an opt-in versus an opt-out, I think it would be easier to support. But Mr. Chair, this entire session has been an assault on our small and micro businesses throughout the year. And this is the wrong way to go. You and I have discussed, well, this will help some of these things will help retain or attract employees. Everyone's competing for employees. They just need the tools to be able to do it, not the mandates, not the additional requirements that is going to make someone question whether or not to offer a new job. Maybe whether or not to even start their own business. We are killing entrepreneurship in this state. And this is one of many bills that have gone through this legislature this session that will do that. I really hope, Mr. Chair, that the Senate DFL caucus takes a step back and wonders, are we really helping? Do they really need our help? Because the small businesses I'm talking to say no. We'll take care of our own employees. We have a great relationship. We believe our employees are like family to us. So, Mr. Chair, I encourage a no vote. This is a bill that is misguided in so many ways. And I appreciate, honestly, Senator Pappas, I appreciate the sentiment behind it and the intentions behind it. And I agree. We need more Minnesotans who are unbanked and underbanked to be participating. We need more of them saving money for life's emergencies. I absolutely agree. I worked on that during my banking career to try to get that This is the wrong direction for us to be going. And I hope you'll reconsider the ideas in this bill, because this is bad from an investment standpoint. It's bad from a policy standpoint. It's bad from an entrepreneurial standpoint. It's bad from a job standpoint in the state of Minnesota.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Pratt, I'm sorry you feel that way. Mr. Chair, I move that the title and contents of House File 782 be stricken and replaced with the title and contents of Senate File 413 as amended.
Before you make that motion, Senator Pappas, you have to, you move to lay Senate File 413 on the table. On that motion.
Oops, sorry. I didn't see that on my script.
On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
I move to lay Senate file on the table is the motion? Okay, move to lay Senate File 413 on the table.
All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Oops, I'm sorry. My apologies. Motion, let's try that again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. On Senator Pappas moves that the title and contents of House File 782 be stricken and replaced with the title and contents of Senate File 413 as amended. On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. With that, Senator Pappas, you're on the way to the floor.
Senate, Mr. Chairman, I move that
You're right.
House File 782 as amended be recommended to pass and sent to the Senate floor.
On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. Now I believe you're on your way to the floor.
Great, thank you.
There, we, as I mentioned at the beginning, we did not get the fiscal note for the Workers' Comp Advisory Council bill, so we will be coming back for that and possibly another bill or so. And with that, but that we'll announce as soon as we know more about that. With that, no further business. This committee is adjourned.